Hello, and today we have the pleasure and honor of speaking to Dr. Jennifer Roelands, who is an OB/GYN specialist in private practice. And she has a lot of history and stories that she's going to share with us to help inform you, especially about how to use food as medicine and how food can be so inflammatory to your body. And we're just going to learn lots from her. I'm so excited. Dr. Roelands, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Can you introduce yourself a little bit more for us?
Sure. I am an OB/GYN board certified. I've been in private practice for 12 years. I currently work in Columbia, Missouri. And so since I graduated residency from Duke, I've been in this private practice the whole time for the last 12 years.
Wonderful. So you have lots of experience, personal, after medical school as well.
Yep.
What got you interested in talking about food as medicine and the inflammation that food can cause?
So I struggled with my own health problems. I think most people who end up in integrative medicine kind of have their own personal story that led them to try to find other solutions. So obviously I'm conventional trained. I went through OB/GYN residency, I went to medical school, but I couldn't find those answers in kind of what I was looking for in the conventional framework. And so in 2011, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and I was having a difficult time getting pregnant. And on paper, I looked perfect. Like if all endocrinologists and OB/GYNs said, this looks fantastic, your labs are great, but I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't feel right. I was extremely tired. My hair was falling out all the time. I had terrible constipation, all the typical thyroid symptoms that people describe, even though my labs looked perfect. And so it kind of made me, I'm normally a very, I like to look into what's going on. I kind of don't really settle with the answers that people usually give me. So I started just kind of digging deeper and trying to figure out maybe something's different about me. Like maybe there's something about me that doesn't really fit into that normal doctor box that we put sometimes patients in. We kind of say, well, you have this disease, we give you this medication, you should feel great, go on with your life will be good. And so I started reading a lot of articles about people like me who are struggling still with a lot of symptoms related to thyroid disease and try to figure out what is it? Is it the wrong medication? Am I doing something wrong? Like, what is it that's so different about me? And that kind of led me to take some functional medicine courses, to look into the literature and really do a lot of PubMed searching and try to figure out what else I can do. And it always came down to the same problem, which was diet, which was the food I was eating. What am I doing differently than other people? And so my mom actually was diagnosed with celiac when I was young. And so I thought, well, maybe I should actually, I don't clearly have a major allergy, but maybe I should actually look into, maybe I have a little bit of a problem like my mom with digestion. So I went gluten-free. I was 32 weeks pregnant at the time. Actually, finally was able to get pregnant. And then I went gluten-free when I was 32 weeks pregnant. And I was like, oh, it's just pregnancy. I'm sure I can eat my chocolate cake when I finish after I deliver. And then, felt so much better when I went gluten-free. Like I could sleep. I didn't have anxiety. My hair wasn't falling out. I didn't need like 5 cups of coffee a day to get through the day. And so the more I kind of did that, and then I delivered my second son, and afterwards I kind of reverted back to my old ways because I thought it's probably pregnancy. It's probably those weird things that happen to you when you get pregnant. But soon I realized it was not actually the problem, that this is actually me, that I have I do believe that people have genetically different guts and that they actually don't respond the same to every medication that you would sort of guess people would normally respond to. So Synthroid doesn't work for everybody.
That's really interesting. I have not thought about that. Tell me, seriously, I've never thought about that. Tell me more.
Well, functional medicine is actually, that's the one thing I do like about functional medicine. They do a lot of times talk about genetic variations in your gut. So they talk about that you probably have, there's, the gut microbiome, or all the bacteria and viruses and fungi that are in your gut are probably very similar across, say 90% of people, but there's always a 10% that people are a little bit different. And your genetics probably play a part into this as to whether or not you have certain types of bacteria and fungus and viruses that are in your gut that are making you digest food appropriately or not digest it appropriately. And so that's kind of where I dug a little bit deeper for me to figure out what is it that I can't tolerate? What is it that is causing my health problems to be worse?
So are you actually celiac? Did you have a positive test or a
I
biopsy or anything?
My test was not positive, so I'm not celiac. I mean, by definition, the standard test, I passed it, but I know
Wow.
that I can't take
So
it.
you went back and forth being gluten-free, but then now
Mhm.
you've been solidly gluten-free for how long?
Since about 2 months after he was born, and he's going to be 11, so pretty much close to 11 years. Yeah.
So do you think you actually never had Hashimoto's, the thyroid disease, or do you think you had it, but it was exacerbated by the gluten intolerance?
Yes, I think I have it, and I have to take medications, and so I have to do that to lower the antibodies. But I think even what was interesting is even after I delivered my second son, I tried to have a third child, and my antibodies were always sky high. It didn't matter if I was on Synthroid for years; I still had sky high antibodies. And so the fertility doctor always mentioned to me, "Well, I don't know. I mean, you're treated, like your labs are fine. I'm not sure why it's such a difficult for you to still appear to have Hashimoto's, even though you weren't." And so it's sort of, that's kind of, I think, to me, sort of the evidence that I probably still had a lot of inflammation, because I didn't do a lot of those things yet. I sort of still was learning in the process about how to decrease my inflammation. So I still kind of had a reaction. My body still sort of reacted until I fixed those things in my gut.
Wow. So other than gluten, what other foods do you find inflammatory for you?
Well, I've always had a little bit of an issue with dairy. So I never, like over the time, I really never ate or drank milk. It's never really appealed to me because I knew I kind of have stomach issues, like ice cream. A bowl of ice cream will just put me over the edge. But I could always tolerate cheese and do fine until this last year. I was starting to get a lot of breakouts on my face. I'm 43. So, when you get over 40, your hormones go, oh my God, and they freak out a lot. And so I started thinking, it all happened when COVID happened. And I thought, oh, it's probably the mask that I wear all day long. Like, I'm sure that's it. I'll just buy expensive face wash and do all these fancy things. And then, the more I sort of thought, again, this is always it's hindsight, right? You go back and go, well, have I ever had this problem before? And then I remember the last time I had a lot of issues with my face was when I was, having a good amount of ice cream and dairy. And so for the last 2 months, I've been dairy free as well.
I share your story. I don't know if you know my story, but I'll share
No,
a little
I want
bit.
to hear it.
So, people doing my course do know my story, but I'll do a brief overview. So, at age 30, I actually got pregnant, surprisingly, in fellowship. And then at 6 months along, I lost that pregnancy due to severe diarrhea. And then when I got pregnant again in 2 years, I started having the same symptoms, kind of preterm contractions, preterm, not exactly labor, but preterm labor, you can say. And I just decided to start reading about gluten and gluten intolerance and found that it's linked to, it's published in PubMed.gov, not Google, but the medical literature that we doctors use,
Yeah.
with, kind of conflicting evidence, probably because people don't want to take ownership of it, but that is linked to miscarriage, is linked to infertility, and went gluten-free and had that baby with some strong medications and high risk OB oversight, and then had trouble getting pregnant with my son, and with some very long fertility meds, got pregnant with him and went gluten-free and had him successfully. And then back and forth on and off of gluten, but for the last 3 years, I've been totally gluten-free. And then last year I went vegan, and after learning about the plant-based nutrition course through Dr. Campbell and Dr. Bernard and all the lifestyle medicine principles of how meat is so inflammatory and increases your risk of heart disease and cancer, especially inflammation of the endothelial cell, the lining of your arteries. And surprise, 6 weeks later, I was pregnant again at 40. Who gets pregnant at 40, just spontaneously
Yeah.
being gluten-free and being vegan, like really, so dairy-free as well, really regulated all my hormones in my entire body. So that's a brief version of my story. But there's scientific data out there, but every time I try to compile it about gluten and miscarriage and gluten and infertility, there's so many conflicting studies. And, when you analyze studies, you want to look at who paid for the study, who sponsored the study. And
Yep.
sometimes it might be the wheat industry trying to tell us to keep eating wheat. But
Mhm.
do you have any like science that you point to when you talk to patients about gluten, or do you just share your story? It's so powerful. So
Yeah, I do try to. I think it's easier when people hear what you have to say, and I often put these in PDF reference sheets. So a lot of the like I'm doing some group coaching and some online coaching with one particular patient, and so I write these down because I think sometimes for us it's like kind of our bread and butter. Like, okay, what study? Who did the study? What was it done? But for the typical patient, our client, I think that they're kind of like, it doesn't sink in. I think the information is so overwhelming because you may not have heard it, or maybe just so kind of against what your mom tells you to do, that it's sort of sometimes hard to hear that. So a lot of times I put that down on a PDF and I reference it and give those to the client so they can actually kind of look it up on their own time if it's something they're interested to.
is there like pearls you can tell our patients of how to pay attention to their body, and what they should be listening to other than GI symptoms? Because some gluten intolerance patients, including you, don't have as many GI or stomach symptoms as other symptoms.
Yeah, I think that there's not, I think the obvious stuff makes you think about GI, like abdominal pain, bloating, those kind of things. But a lot of sort of these, what we call syndromes in medicine, like migraines, for me in my world, interstitial cystitis, endometriosis, all these inflammatory sort of conditions, a lot of people have those symptoms related to that, and they don't ever, connect it to the gut. And I had migraines for a very long time, and I just never ever thought they would go away, but those went away with these changes. But I didn't at the time. It never dawned on me like my brain and my gut may be connected from those sorts of things. And that's sort of when you heal your gut, then your inflammation goes down. And a lot of these other inflammatory conditions that women often face, PCOS is another very common thing that people don't really associate with gut health. But it's amazing what other kind of things fall, they kind of start falling down, even though you don't realize they're connected. They don't seem like they would connect. In the traditional textbook in medicine, we wouldn't say, oh, if you fix your abdominal pain, your headaches are going to go away. Like, it just doesn't seem to, those systems don't connect. When other specialties, I think, kind of see the body as a whole, as opposed to we sometimes see it as systems, which I think does kind of hinder our ability to help people sometimes, because we are always thinking about, well, it's a stomach problem, or it's your heart problem, or it's your brain problem, but it's not the whole thing connected. So I do think that, I think my pearl of what I try to tell people is, your body. Like, if you don't feel right, then you don't feel right. Whatever it is, if it's fatigue, if it's headaches, if it's anxiety, if it's depression, if it's you just don't feel yourself, then you don't feel yourself. Then there's something we need to do to help you feel better, because I just don't think people have to be miserable. Like, why should you have to be miserable if maybe there's another way? We just have to think a little bit outside the box.
I completely agree. Do you do testing on your patients with infertility or PCOS for gluten intolerance? Like, or do you send them to a GI specialist, or how do you
So
approach it with your clients as well as your patients?
So in my private practice, I try to kind of put feelers out to patients who are wanting to hear something else. So sometimes if they're here and they're talking about PCOS, for instance, they have irregular periods, and they're like, well, I'm not really interested in birth control. I'm not interested in, I don't like hormones. And then I kind of say, have you ever thought about your diet? Like, have you ever thought about kind of what you eat, or have you thought about how much stress you have in your life? And so if I kind of put out those questions and someone seems interested, then I usually bring it up and say, hey, why don't we talk about this further? If you're interested, I'd love to talk to you about some other ideas I have for how to fix your PCOS instead of birth control, if you don't want to do that. But I won't typically, because I am, in a traditional setting, I don't sort of say, hey, you have PCOS, let's change your diet. I try to sort of see if the patient gives me information that lets me know that they're open to other ideas as well. Because some people aren't. Some people don't want to hear kind of what I have to say. So, and that's okay. And, but especially infertility patients, they're usually very open to anything. Because, when you want a baby, you want a baby. So
you have stories you can tell us about infertility and changes in diet of your patients, HIPAA compliant, of course, stories.
Yeah. So I have a patient of mine that had, I have known her for all 12 years. I've been in practice, and she had about 6 losses in a row. And I had sent her to REI. I had sent her to maternal fetal medicine. That's sort of our standard approach. Let's talk about why you could be high risk. Let's talk about, can we give you anything to prevent future losses? And, unfortunately her workup was negative. Everything came back. I don't know why this is happening to you. I don't know. We don't have the answer as to why you're having this difficulty. And it was very frustrating. And, I have a established relationship with this lady. Like, I have to see her multiple times per year, and I want to cry with her and just say, I'm so sorry that this is happening. I so wish I could fix you this problem. Like, this is, devastating when this happens. And so we sort of started talking about kind of things in her life. Like, what is it that, maybe we can do differently? Like, what we started kind of digging a little bit deeper into kind of her relationships, her work. What is it that does she take any supplements? What is her diet like? And so, whether or not this is actually the answer or not, I don't have the magic. I don't know whether or not it ultimately was the way she does have a child. Her child's probably 2 now, her son. And so whether or not, I just got lucky and she got pregnant and it worked, I don't know. But I feel like in my heart that it's not. I feel like we addressed some major stressors that she has in her life. We addressed some, I don't want to say PCOS, but she does have some irregular cycles. And once we actually fixed her diet a little bit and talked about, increasing some better foods in her diet, decreasing her inflammation with a supplement, she actually went on fish oil to try to decrease her inflammation. Then she actually had regular cycles, which was kind of interesting. And ultimately she conceived that kiddo without help at all. It was a spontaneous pregnancy.
So was she gluten-free with your guidance? Gluten-free.
Yep.
Was she dairy-free as well?
No. She just got rid of gluten. She added fish oil to her diet. She basically kind of did a cleanse of her life with stress. So she tried to figure out, how to have better limits at work. So she slept better. And, you see this randomly in literature with infertility. You see people who go to do acupuncture and then magically they're pregnant. And it's like, well, was it luck, or was it the fact that we talk a lot about acupuncture being a sort of decrease in inflammation in your body kind of modality? So people ultimately were able to conceive when they were constantly not able to conceive before that. There's a lot of good data that supports IVF and acupuncture together, which is kind of interesting. So I think that, I don't know if it's just luck or what I choose to believe, which I think was her able to have another child. And she is now pregnant with her second. So following the same plan, and she didn't have a loss in between those 2. So it's working for her, and couldn't be happier for her.
I don't think it's luck. I think it's your attentiveness to her condition and talking to her. And as you know from my story and your story, that gluten is so inflammatory. Mm-hmm. I have patients who their fibromyalgia gets better, their back pain gets better, their high grade, what you said, migraines and headaches get better just by going gluten-free.
Yep.
I like to explain the microvilli in our stomach, that absorb the nutrients as kind of like fingers, and gluten kind of smushes them so that there's no microvilli left to absorb the nutrients because they're so inflamed. And it takes like 3 weeks to kind of regrow them being gluten-free to get gluten out of your system. So you really can't eat it one day and then not eat it for 3 days and then eat it again. It's still going to cause inflammation. How do you explain it? Do you have another way to explain it to patients?
No, I think that's perfect. That's kind of what I say. I mentioned to people, a lot of people think, well, I just want to eat gluten for a day and it'll all be fine. I'll find out if it works. And I know elimination diets, if you look them up, they typically say, oh, just for a couple days, get rid of something. I'm like, take a week to get it out of your system, take it out for 3 weeks, put it back in for a week. Because sometimes just the shock of not eating it can, I feel like, can make people kind of go, oh my God, I feel terrible. Like they get constipation, like they have all these other symptoms because they just cold turkey it and they go, okay, I'm not eating any bread or any products with gluten in it, you know, and it's just, it's too much. So I always try to tell people to like, and it's hard. Like it's an adjustment. I mean, people eat some good stuff around you at work. It's hard to back up off it and to figure these things out. And sometimes, like what I found is you don't realize some of these hidden things that have gluten in them, like soy sauce and sometimes barbecue sauce and all these kind of things that you don't think about, but that are problems. So I always tell people, take a week to kind of get things out, to figure out how you can eat what you like without having to have gluten. And then, you know, 3 weeks out, and then journal. I always tell people, write it down, because it's amazing how many times when people do an elimination diet, then you ask them and they go, I think I felt better. I don't know. Maybe was it when it was the dairy or was it when I took peanuts out? I'm always like, write it down. Just write down in your calendar, you know, big smiley face or, you know, a pointed thumb down that you hated that day. Like just write down stuff so that you can just remember the days that you felt good, the days you didn't feel good. And maybe it's even more helpful if you write down what symptoms went away. Like, did your headaches go away? Did your cycle get better? Did you go to sleep better? You know, like what are the actual symptoms? Because a lot of times you can start figuring out some other things, like I was mentioning, that could actually make you feel better you didn't know you had once you fixed your gut. So I'm always a big proponent of talking to people about write it down and just spend time doing it. Don't rush it. Because if you're going to get rid of those things, you might as well find out if it really works rather than just 2 days off. And see
If you have time, I want to talk about 2 more things. Basically, whole food, plant-based diets, and then omega-3s or fish oil, like you mentioned. So I know there's so many new subcategories of medicine. You mentioned functional medicine, integrative medicine, there's lifestyle medicine, there's mind body health. There are so many things, but I think they all work really well together. And one thing with lifestyle medicine is eliminating, or not eliminating, but reducing and trying to eliminate meat products. But the other thing, people get focused on the meat, and I'm like, maybe you don't need to cut out the meat first. Maybe just add whole foods. And even just like a few months ago, there was an article just about how ultra processed food increases your risk of mortality. We're not talking meat products, we're just talking ultra processed food, like maybe those Twinkies or things like that. So tell me your approach to like whole foods versus processed foods.
So I tell people if it has 5 ingredients or less, you're good. If you look on the back of the box and there are 5 ingredients or less, you're good. Like you're fine. If it's, you know, I think people don't really, it seems like, you know, difficult. They're always constantly talking about, you know, convenience and fast, and I can just pick up the granola bar and I'm fine. But there are options for whole food that are the granola bars. You just have to look on the back of the box and look to see if you're already looking for gluten and you're already looking for dairy and you're already sort of looking at reading the labels, it should have only very few ingredients. It should literally be, you know, tomatoes and flour, or not flour for gluten, but you know, like those particular ingredients, and that's it. If you cannot understand what the word is, you shouldn't be eating that. If it's, you know, transaminic, blah, 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 gamma, blah, 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 like you shouldn't be eating it. Like it's as simple as that. If you don't understand that word, you shouldn't be eating it. Because a lot of those things they put preservatives in it so it lasts 6 months on your shelf. Well, that's not great for your gut to be able to last 6 months on the shelf. Like a Twinkie. Twinkies, those things probably last 10 years. I don't even know.
Or Oreos or all of these.
Yeah, I don't even need to break down.
So I know the government is taking charge of that a little bit too, how that, you know, they're trying to eliminate all of these trans fats that were added, like olestra, you know, it's kind of banned now in chips and things like that, which is great that our government is helping all of us live healthier. But we need more. We need just patient education, which I'm so thankful you're taking time with us to talk about it. You know, moving on to omega-3s, I do believe omega-3s are helpful. You know, in lifestyle medicine, they try to talk about getting it from a plant source like algae or walnuts, but fish oil is a great source as well. Can you tell me how you talk to your patients about omega-3s?
So I tell them it's great to get it in food sources if we can. If we can get it in food sources and make it a part of your normal diet, then great. I mean, people love smoothies. You can put a ton of stuff in smoothies. You can add things to your, I add MCT oil to my coffee in the morning. So that's a medium chain triglyceride that actually is from coconut. That's an anti-inflammatory. So I just put a little bit of that in my coffee. So then I am getting something during the day. But if you can't get it through food, then I often tell people supplements are fine too. Like fish oil is sort of the predominant one. My kids actually take fish oil. Barlean's is like a little liquid fish oil, and it's flavored like orange popsicles or orange sickles. Remember those old orange sickles? So they have flavored ones. So that's the only way I can get my kids to do it, is I have a little cup and they have that because it tastes like an orange popsicle. But there are fish oils that come in capsules. But if you don't like fish oil, then flaxseed is a perfectly great option to use. And flaxseed, you can put that in anything. You can put in oatmeal in the morning, smoothies, you can bake it in your products. Like, it's a very easy way for people who are vegan or vegetarian who don't like the taste of fish oil. Because frankly, if you ever have heartburn from fish oil, you'll probably never do it. You'll never take it again because it's the end of that. But if you don't, if you don't tolerate fish oil, then flaxseed is another option that you can consider. And then there's also DHA. DHA is a synthetic anti-inflammatory. So this comes up a lot with pregnant women, because pregnant women have prenatal vitamins now that have DHA in them. So it's the synthetic version. So it's very easy to get a multivitamin or a prenatal with DHA in it. And so if you don't want to take either one of those ones I mentioned, you always have that as an option. And people will typically use that in their vitamin anyway. And then they don't have to try to eat something else or take another supplement and worry about it in general. But DHA, you probably know this from, with working with kids too, is we know it from the kids, it works for the kids. So then now it works for the fetus. As usually you hear about DHA and supplements in milk, because we know it improves the children's cognitive function as they develop. And so now we use a lot in prenatal vitamins. If you look in the prenatal vitamin section, it's everywhere, because if it's good for the child, it's good for the fetus. So we typically recommend as OBs now for people to take a prenatal with DHA in it from that standpoint.
So in ophthalmology, I'm an ophthalmologist, so omega-3s have been studied for so many things. They've been studied for macular degeneration, they've been studied for cataracts, they've been studied for dry eye. And one of the biggest things that I teach my patients is, like you said, the food source is the best source of the omega-3s. Yep. And there's 3 types of omega-3s. There's DHA, EPA, and ALA. And then the ALA gets converted to the DHA and EPA, and you can get DHA in, the highest fish sources would be salmon and herring and EPA. And DHA has actually been shown to decrease the risk of Alzheimer's progression. DHA has also been shown to help diabetics with bleeding inside their eye, diabetic retinopathy.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and DHA and EPA both are good for dry eye. And, the American Heart Association actually recommends all adults take about 800 to 1,000 milligrams of DHA plus EPA per day. Mm-hmm. And for dry eye, some of the studies that were published in the Cornea Journal about 3 to 4 years ago recommend taking double that dose, about 2,000 milligrams of omega-3s per day. And then there's also a difference in how the omega-3s are processed by different companies. I love to educate patients on that. The triglyceride form is the most natural form, but when companies process it, they process it into this alcohol form, which is the type that actually gives you those fishy burps. So if it says ethyl ester or ethyl glycol or something with ethyl, it's an alcohol-based omega-3, and it's not as well absorbed. It actually takes about 3 to 4 times the amount of an ethyl ester omega to equal the same as a triglyceride-based omega. So eating 3 ounces of salmon will give you about 1,600 milligrams of omega-3s, yet taking a 1,600 milligram fish oil pill might only give you a fourth of that, because it's an ethyl ester or alcohol form of the omega-3. So there's so many things that we need to educate patients about, educate ourselves about, we don't know about. So I agree with you on all of that. I love flaxseed too. That's a great one. You can buy it in powder form as well.
Well, and all products are not regulated by the FDA. So you do have a huge amount in quality as well. I mean, it depends on how much they actually police themselves on, their product too. I mean, I think that's a huge, I tell people all the time, it's much better to go to a quality product, even if it's a little bit more expensive, than to be putting things that are not really studied very well, or not very, the company's not sort of interested in efficacy, because they're just, a lot of that is not regulated by the FDA. Just depends on where you're getting your product. I mean, if you're buying from a pharmacy that creates their own, or it's a product like Barlean's over the counter, like it just depends on where you're getting it from as well.
I agree. And there's some great omega-3 products. And then as far as lifestyle medicine, I know some of the lifestyle medicine doctors who are going to be watching this are going to say, well, omega-3 should only be from plant sources. But I do agree that, and not just me, research has proven just what you're saying. We need it for anti-inflammatory effects. And sometimes going completely plant-based may be unrealistic, or, really, really hard. But if you can do it, that's great. If not, you do need that anti-inflammatory property from the omega-3s to help combat the years of inflammation in your body. If you switch immediately, your body's still fighting that inflammation for a while.
Mm-hmm. And I think that if we make it simple for people, it works. I'm a big advocate of, like, I think people just need something simple, and most people have multiple kids, and they have families that they maybe have their grandparents that live with them, or you just have to make it simple. And it's nice to say everybody should get everything through diet and food and plants, but it's not always practical if you're cooking for 8 people in your household to try to be able to say, okay, well, you need to have this 3-ounce portion of salmon, you have 3-ounce portion. I mean, that's expensive. So, I mean, in my part of the country, in Missouri, we don't get a lot of ocean fish. We're in the middle. Our fish, is very limited. That tastes reasonable because it has to be frozen before you ever get it. So I think, it's sometimes easier. I think I love a lot of components of lifestyle medicine, but I do think sometimes we have to sort of make it easy for people to make changes, or they won't make the changes. It's,
right.
That's why fast food is so popular, because it's convenient. It's convenient. It's easy. You don't have to think. You just go, you just drive through. McDonald's helps you in 10 minutes or less. It's just, we have to make it simple. And so I think sometimes, if it doesn't work that you can get all those plant-based options, then take a supplement. I mean, it's okay. Whatever works to heal your body is much more important than the process, if you can't follow those specific guidelines. So
I totally agree with you. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Are there any last words of advice you have for our patients who are wanting to change their diet, other than journaling, which I think is a great point that you brought up, writing down your feelings? Go ahead.
I would just say, if you've had some bad experiences with, endocrinology or your primary care, like, don't give up. Like, there are people like us who want to help you. I may not know all the answers. I definitely don't know all the answers. I'm still learning myself, but try to find someone that you vibe well with, that you can actually talk to them and you can try to address your problems. I mean, I think it's very easy to just kind of go, okay, fine. They said I'm fine. I'll be fine. And just be down about it when you don't feel good. And I think sometimes people just need to find the right person. So it's okay. As a physician, if someone went to someone else because they felt more comfortable talking to them, I'm okay with it. Like, it's more important that they find the answer they need than me be offended because I didn't know enough about dry eye. Like, it's okay. Like, you find the person that works to help you get better. It's okay to do that, to find the right person. So I think don't give up and just try to find that person that's going to be helpful for you, because I'm glad I didn't give up, because I feel much better than I did. And I certainly learn things from other people all the time, and I'm happy to learn those things. And so it's not just, in medical school, we do our little thing and we kind of do the same thing over and over and over again. And we don't always sort of think about other specialties or other areas. And so I think it's important that we try to seek answers out for people that need our help.
Thank you. I agree. Do you want to tell us about your coaching and your clients that you work with, and how they can get in touch with you, and what state you're licensed in, I guess, for medical licensure?
Sure. So I created a business called Well Woman. It's WOMAN MD. I have a website. And so it also talks about on the website things that I'm working on with people. Right now I'm doing one-on-one coaching with 2 clients. And then I'm hoping to do some group coaching, because I really think that women helping women is awesome. Like, I just think I learned so much when you're in a group setting and people bring up things, their experiences, then I just think it's nice to sort of have a women helping women approach. So I'm hoping to do some group coaching as the fall goes on. I know everybody's a little stressed out about school starting, including myself. So we're gonna let school start and new virtual learning occur. And then as the fall goes on, I wanna work on group coaching. And then I just recently finished a digital course that I am posting. You can see through my website on hypothyroidism and ways to boost your energy and feel better overall.
Oh, wow. That sounds great. So
Yeah.
I will put a link of your website under this video as well.
Awesome.
And you're licensed to do the coaching in Missouri?
Yeah, so I'm in Missouri and I actually have a California license as well.
So Missouri and California, if someone wants to work directly with Dr. Roelands.
Yeah, we have a
They
telehealth.
can take the course, the digital course from any state
Yes.
and learn from your experience. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, in coaching, it's not this health coaching. So I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm not treating anybody. I'm not telling you have PCOS. We're not going through sort of the medical evaluation because I have no way to do any lab work or anything if you're virtual. So this is the health coaching is, you can do that anywhere. But if you want to do like a telehealth visit, then my practice actually has telehealth opportunities. So if someone's still trying to figure out from the beginning, do they have a thyroid problem? Then there is telehealth options through my practice that I have, and that's actually listed on the website as well, my practice.
I think COVID has allowed our message to be heard so much louder, and I'm grateful you're willing to share, and we'll just keep learning more together.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you.